Hi, welcome to the Toddcast for January 20th, 2012. Starting today's Toddcast off with some shots of today's snowstorm. This is actually... Hi. This is actually the second Toddcast I did today. The first one had a cute idea. It was earlier in the snowstorm. I took my tripod and I walked out onto our frozen lake and stood there in a blizzard, well, at least a snowstorm, and Toddcasted for about 7 minutes. And then when I got it home and played it back, I realized that everything I was saying was broken up intermittently by gusts of wind. The sounds of, not just the wind from my mouth, but the actual wind, the element of the earth. And I should have figured that. I think viewers of the Toddcast are used to the low tech. And hopefully, you have to accept the low tech aspect, but yeah, this camera doesn't know how. I'm sure that there are cameras that know how to filter out things and pay attention to my voice, but this camera doesn't. So I'd start a sentence and then there'd be a gust and my lips would be moving, but you couldn't hear it, and then you could hear the finish. I don't know, maybe I will upload that just for the comic value, but yeah, it's 8 minutes of broken sentences, so maybe not. But yeah, I thought it would be cute to do that out here in I guess the first major snowstorm of the year. And by Iowa standards, that's awfully late. And in fact, less than 2 weeks ago, I would have been afraid to walk out on the ice because it just hadn't been cold enough for it to make it, safe. At least by my standards. I'm not one of those people who thinks it has to be frozen all the way to the bottom before I'm going to stand on it, but still, I want to make sure that I'm not going to die a horrible hypothermic death. So I was avoiding the lake until today. We've actually had a week of, I guess, fairly normal temperatures. It's been below zero a couple times, and I love if you go on the weather site and look at the temperature, it'll be feels like negative 24 because of the wind. So it was fairly frozen, and I could, there's a bunch of snow around. Started snowing last night in the wee small hours, and I thought that would be a neat effect, but I was wrong. But I still wanted to show you an Iowa snowstorm, and at least a mild one so far, and then use that as a backdrop to tell about my favorite ever Iowa blizzard. When I was growing up here, we had one winter that was as mild as this one, maybe even milder, and that was my senior year of high school, 1980 to 81. And that was blamed on the eruption the spring before at Mount St. Helens, and all of the ash that it threw into the air had caused a mini greenhouse effect, at least for that winter, and it was pretty mild. It got I think into the 60s here about 2 weeks ago, it would be easy to blame that on our carbon emissions since 81 and before 81, but I don't think that's the cause. I think it's an even bigger thing now. It's some sort of thing that happens to the planet every now and again, sort of a readjustment or something where the winter can be really mild. I'm not a climate change denier. I know that our carbon emissions affect the environment, and but this isn't caused by that. The flooding every year is caused by that. But anyhow, I think that actually the past couple winters here were fairly bad, even by Iowa standards, maybe as bad as some of the ones of my youth. But even though I've been here for 12 months in the past 2 years, I somehow managed to dodge both those winters. And I was getting actually a little disappointed because I figured, what's the point of being stuck in Iowa in the winter if you don't have a couple blizzards? So I'm actually kind of happy about this, if only for the authenticity. Of course, if it's like this into April, I might be a little upset. We'll see how that goes. And I mentioned before, this maybe isn't a blizzard, it's just a snowstorm, and I think the difference between a blizzard and a snowstorm is the amount of wind. I did mention that the wind was fairly bad this morning, but it's nothing like it can get during a good old-fashioned Iowa blizzard. And the snow here is not like New York snow in a number of ways. There is actually generally less snow here in a snowstorm, but it's not as sticky. It's not as wet. It's really cold snow, and so that means it doesn't stick to anything. So any little amount of wind can cause some fairly dangerous driving conditions, and can pile up drifts in a matter of minutes that make it prohibitive to get through. In New York, it could snow, well, one time it snowed 14 inches actually 16 inches when I was there, but it was gone within a couple of days, because out in New York it'll be in the 50s within a couple of days. So yeah, but here it generally stays cold, although we'll see it. Like I said, it has been unusually warm here, but we'll see if this stays or not. But so, for example, even if it's actually snowing again now, but if it quits, if the wind comes up tomorrow, it will be as bad as if it were actually snowing, because the snow that's on the ground will get up in the air like it's snowing again. And so, this happened all the time when I was a kid, and I think the worst snowstorm ever was when I was in 6th grade, and it was maybe January of around this time in 1975, and that was an average, or a fairly average snow year, so there was a lot more snow already on the ground when that one occurred, but then we got a ton more snow, and then a lot of wind. And excuse me, that storm was so bad that we got out of school early on a Friday and didn't go back to school again until the next Wednesday. So it was like a 5-day snowstorm, or it was maybe 2 or 3 days of snowstorms, and then 3 days of digging out. And we got out a couple times that year, and every year we'd have a snow day or two, which the kids always loved. We always loved the idea of getting out of school early, or not going into school and then playing in the snow. And I always was a little bit upset at our teachers, but when they'd say, "Oh, don't be so happy, this means you're gonna have to go to school longer or later at the end of May or maybe into June." And thinking back to that now, why would you do that? Why would you want to bring sadness upon your students for no reason? You're saying that is not going to stop it snowing. You want us to be less happy with the way things are. Why try to wreck our snow buzz by saying we're going to be going to school into summer? And although I do remember the worst overall winter we had was my sophomore year, 78, 79. And yeah, it seemed like we were still going to school in August. But whatever, don't try to bring us down. Why can't we enjoy it while it's happening? Anyhow, that blizzard, because it happened on a Friday, we knew that no matter if it stopped right away, we weren't going to be coming to school the next day. So my parents, who were still together then, and we lived in a really big house at the time, decided to have a party and have a bunch of their friends and a bunch of me and my sister's friends come over. And one of the fastest ways to do that was to invite the White family, our friends from when we had lived across town and had known for a long time, and they're almost surrogate family, and they have 3 kids, and my folks were friends with their folks, so they would come over. But then a bunch of my mom's and dad's friends, and then a bunch other of my friends, like kids from the neighborhood and friends of my sister's, came over. So there was like at least 10 kids there. and playing ping pong, and or playing card games, playing Monopoly, or just doing kid stuff, and that was a blast. And I think of about 20 people stayed overnight that night because it just kept getting worse, and by the time people got there, it was a bad idea to try to go home. In fact, a number of people arrived on snowmobiles, which would have been the only way you could have gotten out of there, at least for a while. So that was pretty cool. I also remember that was back when Kolchak the Night Stalker was on TV, and I loved that show. Darren McGavin, and yeah, and I watched it every Friday, even though I'm a big scaredy cat. It would sometimes it'd freak me out so badly that I would have nightmares. But anyhow, I watched it that night, and it happened to be, it was set in Chicago, and it happened to be a snowstorm in Chicago, and there was a werewolf, and I don't know, for some reason I wasn't thinking after that show. I walked outside just because I wanted to see what get the feeling, the authenticity of a blizzard, and I got a ways away from the house, and then I remembered the werewolf, and I ran as fast as my snowmobile boots would take me through the mounting snow to get back inside where my friends and family were, and I enjoyed the rest of the evening. So that's my snow blizzard story. I guess if it does stick around, one of my future Toddcasts will be the bumper skiing Toddcast, which will give you something to look forward to. But until whatever Toddcast you see next, try to not to get stranded in the snow, and take care.